Hello and welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're embarking on, well, quite an ambitious adventure actually. A journey into the very first book of a text that has profoundly shaped history, thought, belief. The book of Genesis.
That's right.
And for anyone who's maybe never really explored these foundational stories, this deep dive is specifically for you. Our mission is pretty clear. We're going to unpack these stories, not like a lecture, but more like captivating tales. We want to draw out the most important sort of nuggets of knowledge and insight. Think of it as your shortcut to being well-informed, maybe with a few surprising details along the way.
Exactly. Our aim is to guide you through this really significant material, helping you understand not just what supposedly happened in these ancient accounts, but why they still resonate, why they're significant for understanding, well, the world and our place in it.
We're aiming for depth, clarity,
Yeah.
getting those enduring ideas across.
Right. Seriousness, but accessibility.
Okay, let's unpack this from the absolute beginning then. Genesis opens with that grand statement. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Now that phrase, in the beginning, it immediately makes you wonder, what does it actually mean? Right there in Genesis.
It's a great place to start because, there are really two main ways scholars look at it. One view is, yes, God creating absolutely everything, all matter, from nothing.
Okay.
But another perspective, and this one has a lot of scholarly backing, suggests Genesis 1 isn't necessarily focused on the creation of the raw materials, but more on how God organized an already existing sort of chaotic state into a world fit for life.
Ah, interesting. So shaping it rather than making the stuff itself.
Precisely. The description of the earth being without form and void, and God bringing order piece by piece, that really leans into this idea. It's about establishing cosmos from chaos.
And that initial state? Does sound pretty wild. The earth was without form and empty, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the waters. That word hovering, does it suggest something more, maybe something nurturing?
It absolutely can. The Hebrew word there, it can evoke the image of a bird, like brooding over its eggs, incubating its young. So it suggests this powerful, almost life-giving presence, preparing everything, getting that formless void ready for life.
Then we launch into the famous 6 days of creation. What's the key thing to grasp from that quick sequence?
Well, the real genius there isn't just what God created, but the logical, purposeful order of it all. Light and darkness, that establishes time.
Right.
Then a firmament separates the waters, creating space. Dry land appears and immediately brings forth vegetation, and not just a few plants, but this productive abundance, dashes that scenes with seeds that keep going.
Self-sustaining.
Exactly. Then you get the sun, moon, stars, not just for light, but as signs for seasons, days, years, timekeepers.
Okay.
Then fish and birds fill the waters and sky. Interestingly, this is the first time the specific verb create, bara, appears in the account proper, often emphasizing something new and divinely perfect. It even mentions the tannonym, maybe great sea creatures or even mythical beings.
Oh.
And the command, be fruitful and multiply, given to them stresses this fertility is a divine decree, not some pagan rite. Then land animals. Each step builds logically towards the climax.
Which brings us to day 6, the grand finale, when God says, let us make man in our image after our likeness. That plural us. It always catches people's attention, doesn't it? What's the thinking there?
It's a really profound moment. Now, later theological ideas, like the Trinity, they get read back into this. But in the immediate context of Genesis, the most sort of natural reading suggests God is addressing his heavenly court, his angelic assembly.
Like he's including them somehow.
Maybe inviting them to witness or perhaps even participate in praise, but it's clear God alone does the creating. And that divine image, it's generally understood not as physical looks, but about humanity's unique role. Stewardship, dominion, relationship, reflecting God's own role on earth.
And it's crucial, isn't it, that humanity, male and female, is created right then, together, complete from the start.
Precisely, not an afterthought. And with that creation comes this really significant mandate. Be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth and subdue it and have dominion. Now, that word subdue, Kabash, it's important. It isn't about harsh oppression.
Right, not exploitation.
No, it's more like bringing creation under careful management for mutual benefit, cultivating, developing resources, caring for the world as God's representatives. It actually affirms human work as part of the original good creation. The initial diet, by the way, was vegetarian. Meat eating seems to come later.
And then, after all that intense creative activity, God rests on the 7th day. Blesses it, makes it holy. a pause, a completion.
Which brings us nicely into Genesis chapter 2. And it's important to note this isn't a second contradictory creation story. It's more like zooming in, focusing on how things unfolded specifically with humanity, setting the stage for, well, what comes next? The garden, the relationship.
Right, the human element. And God plants this amazing garden in Eden, which fittingly means pleasure or delight. It's described so vividly. Those four rivers, Pishon, Gihon, Tigris, Euphrates, one flowing through Havilah, a land rich with pure gold, bdellium, onyx stone. Sounds absolutely idyllic.
It really does, a place of abundance. And the man's role there is clear. He's put in the garden to work it and keep it. This isn't toil, not yet. It's joyful responsibility, care, cultivation, very different from the painful toil mentioned later.
And in this perfect setup, there's just one single prohibition, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, with that stark warning attached, in the day that you eat of it, you shall surely die.
Yeah, and that Hebrew phrase, matamut, dying you shall die, it emphasizes the absolute certainty of death. Not necessarily two distinct deaths right away, but the start of an inevitable process of separation. Separation from God, that's the immediate spiritual consequence, the broken relationship. And that leads eventually to physical death, separation from the land of the living.
Okay, and then the creation of woman. Adam names the animals, but finds no helper fit for him. So God causes a deep sleep, takes a rib, and fashions Eve. Adam's reaction is just so powerful. This at last is bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh.
It really highlights that deep connection, that perfect correspondence. The text even uses a clever wordplay in Hebrew between ish, man, and isha, woman, to underscore this unique suitability. They belong together.
And the passage wraps up with that significant statement, almost like an editorial note. Therefore, a man shall leave his father and his mother and hold fast to his wife, and they shall become one flesh.
Right, that's the narrator linking this foundational event to the ongoing reality of marriage. One flesh signifies this new primary family unit, legally becoming like one relative.
It sets up their initial state perfectly. Naked and not ashamed, total innocence, vulnerability, integrity.
Exactly, which makes the entry of the serpent even more jarring, described as more crafty or shrewd than any other wild creature. There's even a subtle wordplay in Hebrew between aram, crafty, and aram, naked, hinting that the tempter's cunning targets their very nakedness, their integrity.
Ooh, interesting.
And the serpent's dialogue with the woman. It's a masterclass in twisting things. First, it distorts God's command, did God really say? Then it flat out denies the consequence, you will not surely die. And finally, it offers a tempting alternative. You'll be like God, knowing good and evil.
And the woman is swayed. She sees the tree is good for food, pleasing to the eye, desirable for wisdom. She takes the fruit, eats it, and gives some to her husband who is with her, and he eats too.
And the text says, immediately the eyes of both were open, and they knew that they were naked. That knowledge, that awareness of their nakedness, it signals this profound shift, loss of innocence, introduction of shame.
It's striking how quick it is. She took, ate. He ate. Just boom, boom, boom.
Exactly. The immediacy is key. And their first reaction, sewing fig leaves together, a futile attempt to cover their newfound shame.
Then comes the confrontation. They hear the sound of the Lord God walking in the garden in the cool of the day. Now, that cool of the day, could it be more ominous?
It's possible. The Hebrew ruach hayom could mean the evening breeze, but ruach can also mean wind or spirit, and some suggest it might imply a storm wind or even a thunderous roar, God appearing perhaps in judgment, not just for a casual stroll.
Right. And God's questions, where are you? Who told you? Have you eaten? They feel rhetorical, don't they? Like, he already knows.
Absolutely. They're designed to draw out confession, to bring them face to face with what they've done.
But instead of confession, we get the blame game. Adam blames Eve and even subtly blames God, the woman you gave me, and Eve blames the serpent.
That chain of blame instantly shows the fractured relationships. Now, the judgments or consequences that follow aren't random punishments. They directly address the sin and its fallout. For the serpent, cursed, forced to crawl, eat dust, and this perpetual enmity is declared between its offspring and the woman's. Culminating in a future strike, the woman's offspring crushes the serpent's head while the serpent strikes his heel, a forecast of ongoing conflict.
And for the woman, increased pain in childbearing, a complex desire related to her husband and his rule over her.
And for the man, the very ground is cursed because of him. Work becomes painful toil at Savan, the same root used for God's grief earlier. The ground yields thorns. He'll eat by the sweat of his brow until he returns to the dust he came from. mortality confirmed.
Wow, that connection between sin and sorrow, Sivan, is powerful. Yet even in judgment, there's that glimmer. Adam names his wife Eve, Hawa, related to living, K, an affirmation of a life right there.
It is a statement of faith, perhaps. And then God himself acts with mercy. He makes them garments of skin. An animal has to die to cover their shame. A first hint of sacrifice, of substitution.
Which leads directly to their expulsion from Eden, to prevent them reaching the tree of life, guarded now by cherubim and a flaming sword.
Right, and that expulsion is crucial. Eating from the tree of life in their fallen state would mean eternal existence in sin, in separation from God. So, paradoxical as it sounds, barring access is also an act of mercy, preventing endless misery.
Okay, so outside Eden, the story moves to the first children, Cain and Abel. Cain the farmer, Abel the shepherd. They both bring offering.
Yes. Cain brings fruit of the ground. Abel brings the best, the firstborn, the fat portions of his flock. God accepts Abel's offering, but rejects Cain's. The how isn't stated. Maybe fire from heaven consumed Abel's, but later scripture, like Hebrews, says Abel offered by faith. It suggests the heart attitude behind the offering mattered. Cain's was lacking.
And Cain's reaction is intense. Anger, fallen face. God even warns him directly, right, that sin is like a predator crouching at the door. Its desire is contrary to you, but you must rule over it. What an image.
It really is a direct warning and a call to responsibility. But Cain doesn't listen. He lures Abel into the field and kills him. The first murder.
God confronts Cain again with that haunting question. Where is Abel, your brother? Followed by the chilling statement, the voice of your brother's blood is crying to me from the ground. The very earth testifies against him.
The curse follows swiftly. Cursed are you from the ground. It won't yield its full potential for him anymore. He's condemned to be a restless wanderer, a fugitive.
Cain cries out, my punishment is greater than I can bear. He's afraid someone will kill him in revenge.
And here's another moment of unexpected divine action. God puts a mark on Cain, not a mark of shame, but a sign of protection so no one will kill him. He even promises sevenfold vengeance on anyone who harms Cain. Despite the judgment, there's protection. But Cain still departs from the presence of the Lord, settling east of Eden. The narrative then traces Cain's descendants. We see the beginnings of civilization, city building with Enoch, arts like music and metalworking with Lamech's sons. But it's a civilization increasingly marked by sin. Lamech introduces polygamy and boasts about escalating violence.
Yeah, that Song of Lamech or Song of the Sword is terrifying. He brags he'll avenge himself 77-fold, far exceeding the sevenfold protection God gave Cain. It's a spiral downwards.
Exactly. But then, in contrast, we get the lineage of Seth, the son given to Adam and Eve in place of Abel. And with Seth's son Enosh, the text notes, at that time, people began to call upon the name of the Lord, a hopeful countercurrent.
Chapter 5 then gives that long genealogy from Adam to Noah. The refrain, and he died, echoes throughout, emphasizing the reign of death. Until Enoch, he walked with God, and he was not, for God took him. A stunning exception.
A powerful foreshadowing. But as humanity multiplies, so does wickedness. We encounter that very mysterious passage about the sons of God marrying the daughters of men.
Right, who were the sons of God, angels, kings, Seth's descendants.
Interpretations vary widely. Were they fallen angels engaging in unnatural unions? Descendants of the godly line of Seth mixing with others? Or powerful rulers taking women as they pleased? The sources we're drawing on tend to favor the interpretation of angelic beings stepping outside their bounds.
Yeah, their offspring were the Nephilim, mighty men, heroes of old.
Yes, the Nephilim. Possibly figures of great power or even gigantic stature, part of ancient Near Eastern lore, contributing to the world's escalating violence and corruption.
And that corruption becomes total. The text emphasizes it. Every intention of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. That's incredibly comprehensive.
It is. Total depravity. And this leads to God's profound sorrow, his grief. The Hebrew word etzav, again the same root as the painful toil from the curse. Human sin literally causes God pain.
And God's decision is devastating. I will blot out man whom I have created from the face of the land. It includes animals too, because human corruption has ruined the whole earth.
It's a reset. A decreation, almost. But amidst this universal judgment, there's that crucial phrase, but Noah found favor or grace in the eyes of the Lord, one righteous man.
So Noah, described as righteous, blameless in his generation, a man who walked with God. He has 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth.
And the earth's condition is re-emphasized, corrupt and filled with violence. That word covers everything from social injustice and oppression to outright murder and assault. Total breakdown.
God's instructions for the ark are incredibly specific. Go for wood, massive dimensions, 300 cubits long, 50 wide, 30 high, sealed with pitch, a window or roof opening, a door, 3 decks. A huge undertaking.
Absolutely. And Noah's response is highlighted again. Noah did this. He did all that God commanded him. Complete, unwavering obedience in the face of universal corruption and presumably ridicule.
And then the boarding. Noah, his family, and the animals. 7 pairs of every clean animal, 1 pair of unclean, 7 pairs of birds, a preservation of life.
The flood itself is catastrophic. Rain for 40 days, 40 nights, water surging, covering the highest mountains by over 20 feet. All flesh outside the ark perishes. Only Noah and those with him survive. The waters dominate the earth for 150 days.
Finally, the waters recede. God remembered Noah, a covenant term, implying action based on relationship. A wind blows, the waters subside, the ark lands on the mountains of Ararat. Noah sends out birds. First a raven, then a dove. The dove eventually returns in the fresh olive leaf, a sign.
Yes, a sign of new growth, of hope. After leaving the ark, Noah's first act is worship. He builds an altar and offers burnt offerings from the clean animals. And the Lord smelled the pleasing aroma, indicating acceptance of the worship and the worshiper.
God then makes a covenant promise. Never again to curse the ground because of humans, never again to destroy all life with a flood. Even acknowledging the inclination of the human heart is evil from his youth. He promises the cycles of nature, seed time and harvest, cold and heat, summer and winter, day and night will never cease.
It's a new beginning, a reaffirmation of creation's order. God blesses Noah and his sons with the original mandate. Be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth.
And there's a change in diet allowed, now meat is permitted, but with that very specific restriction. Don't eat meat with its lifeblood still in it.
Yes, the sanctity of blood representing life is paramount. This leads to the principle of justice for bloodshed. God will require an accounting for every life taken. Whoever sheds the blood of man, by man shall his blood be shed, for God made man in his own image. A foundational statement about the value of human life and the basis for justice.
And the covenant is sealed with the sign of the rainbow, a visible promise in the sky, reminding both God and humanity of his commitment never again to flood the entire earth.
After this grand renewal, the story takes a rather strange and difficult turn. Noah plants a vineyard, gets drunk, and passes out naked in his tent.
And the reactions of his sons are key. Ham, the father of Canaan, sees his father's nakedness, and perhaps mockingly tells his brothers outside. Shem and Japheth, however, act respectfully. They take a garment, walk backward, and cover their father without looking.
When Noah awakens and learns what happened, he pronounces a curse, not on Ham directly, but on Ham's son Canaan. Cursed be Canaan, a servant of servants shall he be to his brothers. Shem and Japheth receive blessings. This incident is often seen as foreshadowing the future relationship between Israel, descended from Shem, and the Canaanites.
Chapter 10 follows with the Table of Nations. It's this fascinating genealogy tracing how Noah's descendants spread out after the flood, forming the nations of the known world. It highlights figures like Nimrod, a mighty hunter before the Lord, and founder of cities like Babel.
Right. And it's interesting how Chapter 10 shows the result: scattered nations, different languages, and then Chapter 11 backtracks to explain how that happened. It shows Genesis isn't strictly linear, it sometimes groups things thematically.
Which brings us right to the Tower of Babel in Chapter 11. At this point, the whole earth had one language and the same words. They migrate east, settle in Shinar, Babylonia, and decide to build a city and a huge tower, a ziggurat, with its top in the heavens. Their explicit goals: let us make a name for ourselves, lest we be dispersed over the face of the whole earth.
That motivation is key. It's human ambition trying to achieve unity and fame on its own terms, defying God's implicit command to fill the earth. Reaching the heavens was likely an attempt to assert power, maybe even access the divine realm. Their phrase, "let us make," is a deliberate, perhaps ironic, echo of God's "let us make man."
God's response is almost understated. He came down to see the city and tower. He observes their unity and declares nothing that they propose to do will now be impossible for them. It's a recognition of unchecked human potential when unified in rebellion.
So God says again, using the plural, "Come, let us go down," and there confuse their language. Speaking likely to the heavenly court again, God's descending is the direct counterpoint to humanity's arrogant attempt to ascend.
And the result? Confusion. They can no longer understand each other, so they stop building. God scatters them across the earth. The city gets the name Babel, which sounds like the Hebrew word for confuse, Balal, even though in Babylonian it meant gate of God. A divine judgment and a bit of wordplay mocking human pride. From that scattering, the focus dramatically narrows. Chapter 11 traces the line of Shem down to one man, Abram living in Ur of the Chaldeans. His family travels towards Canaan but stops in Haran.
And then in Genesis 12 comes that pivotal, foundational moment, God's call to Abram, go from your country and your kindred and your father's house to the land that I will show you. A radical command to leave everything familiar.
Tied to that command are those incredible promises. 1, I will make you a great nation. 2, I will bless you and make your name great. 3, you will be a blessing. 4, I will bless those who bless you, curse those who curse you. And the ultimate goal, 5, in you all the families of the earth shall be blessed.
This is huge. It's the hinge point. Notice the structure, an imperative, followed by these cohortatives, expressions of purpose or result. Abram's obedience is the key that unlocks not just personal blessing, but a blessing intended for the entire world. He becomes the channel for God's redemptive plan.
And Abram obeys. At 75 years old, he leaves Haran with his wife Sarai, his nephew Lot, and all their possessions. He arrives in Canaan at Shechem.
And there God appears to him and makes the promise more specific. To your offspring I will give this land. Abram responds by building an altar, marking the place, and acknowledging God's promise.
Chapter 12 also includes that tricky episode in Egypt. There's a famine. Abram goes down there. Afraid because Sarai is beautiful, he says she's his sister. Pharaoh takes her, and Abram benefits. Until God sends plagues on Pharaoh's house. Pharaoh figures it out and kicks them out.
Yes. It's a morally complex moment, showing Abram's fear and lack of faith. But significantly, it also foreshadows Israel's later experience in Egypt going down due to famine, facing oppression, and being delivered by God's intervention. It sets a pattern.
Back in Canaan, chapter 13 describes Abram and Lot separating. They become too wealthy, their herdsmen fight. Abram graciously offers Lot first choice. Lot chooses the lush Jordan Valley near Sodom, described ominously as full of wicked sinners.
After Lot leaves, God reaffirms and expands the promise to Abram. Lift up your eyes and look. All the land that you see I will give to you and to your offspring forever. His descendants will be uncountable, like the dust of the earth.
Then comes a major conflict in chapter 14. A coalition of 4 eastern kings wages war against 5 kings of the Jordan Plain, including Sodom and Gomorrah. Lot gets captured.
Abram doesn't hesitate. He musters his 318 trained men, chases down the victorious kings, defeats them, and rescues Lot and all the people and goods. A remarkable military feat.
And on his return, he has this mysterious encounter with Melchizedek, king of Salem, likely Jerusalem, and priest of God Most High, Helalion, possessor of heaven and earth. Melchizedek blesses Abram, and Abram gives him 1/10 of everything.
Melchizedek is fascinating. He pops up almost out of nowhere. He represents a priesthood and kingship outside the Abrahamic line, acknowledging the one true God. Later scripture sees him as a type, a foreshadowing of Christ, a king-priest who is superior even to Abraham.
Then the king of Sodom offers Abram spoils, but Abram refuses point blank. He swears to God Most High he won't take anything, not a thread or a sandal strap, so the king can't say, I have made Abram rich. He lets his allies take their share, though.
This shows Abram's complete reliance on God as his provider, his shield, and very great reward, as God tells him shortly after. He refuses to be indebted to a pagan king or compromise his integrity.
And that leads right into chapter 15, where God formalizes his covenant with Abram. Abram voices his deep anxiety. He's still childless. His heir is Eliezer, his servant from Damascus.
God's reassurance is powerful and direct. This man shall not be your heir. Your very own son shall be your heir. Then he takes him outside. Look toward heaven and number the stars. So shall your offspring be.
And here's that crucial verse. And he believed the Lord, and he counted it to him as righteousness. Abram's faith, his trust in God's promise, despite the impossible circumstances, is credited as righteousness.
God then confirms the land promise through a solemn covenant ceremony. Abram prepares sacrificed animals, cut in half. As deep sleep and dread fall upon Abram, symbols of God's presence, a smoking fire pot and a flaming torch pass between the pieces. This ancient ritual signifies a self-maledictory oath. Basically, God is saying, may this happen to me if I fail to keep my promise. He takes full responsibility.
Wow. And within that terrifying vision, God reveals the future. Abram's descendants will be enslaved in a foreign land for 400 years, but God will judge that nation, and they'll come out with great wealth.
Yes, a prophecy of the Egyptian bondage and exodus. The covenant also defines the vast extent of the promised land, from the Nile Delta, river of Egypt, to the Euphrates.
But the promised child still hasn't arrived. So in chapter 16, we see Sarai take matters into her own hands.
Right. Following a common custom of the time to provide an heir, Sarai gives her Egyptian servant Hagar to Abram as a secondary wife or concubine.
Hagar conceives, and immediately there's friction. Hagar looks down on Sarai, her barren mistress.
Sarai complains bitterly to Abram, essentially saying, "This is your fault, may God judge." Abram basically washes his hands of it and tells Sarai to do as she pleases with Hagar. Sarai treats her harshly, and Hagar flees.
The angel of the Lord finds Hagar in the wilderness by a spring. He tells her to return and submit to Sarai.
But he also gives her a promise. Her descendants will be countless. Her son is to be named Ishmael. God hears, because God has heard her suffering. He's described vividly as a wild donkey of a man, destined for conflict.
Hagar has her own encounter with God, calling him El Roi, the God who sees me. She's amazed that she has seen God and lived.
She returns and gives birth to Ishmael. Abram is 86 years old. 13 years pass.
Then, in chapter 17, God appears to Abram again, now 99 years old. He reveals a new name for himself. El Shaddai, usually translated God Almighty, perhaps emphasizing his power to bring life from barrenness. He commands Abram, "Walk before me and be blameless," a call to covenant faithfulness.
God then formally establishes the covenant of circumcision. Abram's name is changed to Abraham, father of a multitude. The covenant promises countless descendants, nations, kings in the land of Canaan forever.
And the sign of this covenant is circumcision for all males at 8 days old. It's a physical mark of belonging to the covenant people. Anyone uncircumcised is cut off.
Sarai's name is also changed to Sarah, princess, and God makes the explicit promise. Sarah herself will bear Abraham a son. She will be a mother of nations.
Abraham's reaction is, well, human. He falls on his face and laughs inwardly. A 100-year-old man, a 90-year-old woman. He even pleads, "Oh, that Ishmael might live before you," still thinking Ishmael is the heir.
God's response is firm but gracious. "No, but Sarah, your wife, shall bear you a son, and you shall call his name Isaac." Isaac, Yitzhak, meaning he laughs. The covenant will be established with Isaac, but God doesn't forget Ishmael. He promises to bless him greatly too, make him a great nation with 12 princes.
Abraham obeys immediately, circumcising himself, Ishmael, now 13, and all the males of his household that very day.
Soon after, chapter 18 describes the visit of 3 mysterious men to Abraham by the oaks of Mamre. Abraham shows extraordinary hospitality, rushing to serve them a feast.
One of the visitors, clearly identified as the Lord, repeats the promise. "I will surely return to you about this time next year, and Sarah your wife shall have a son." Sarah, listening inside the tent, overhears and laughs silently, incredulously.
The Lord calls her out. Why did Sarah laugh? Is anything too hard for the Lord? He reaffirms the promise. Sarah's laugh of doubt will become a laugh of joy.
As 2 of the visitors head toward Sodom, Abraham stays with the Lord, who reveals his intention to investigate the outcry against Sodom and Gomorrah and potentially destroy them for their great sin. This leads to Abraham's incredible intercession.
Right. Abraham bargains with God, starting at 50 righteous people needed to spare the city, then down to 45, 40, 30, 20, finally down to just 10. God agrees each time. If 10 righteous are found, he won't destroy it. It's a powerful picture of God's patience and Abraham's bold compassion.
The 2 angels arrive in Sodom, chapter 19, and Lot insists they stay with him. That night, all the men of the city surround the house, demanding Lot bring out his guests so they can sexually assault them. Utter depravity.
Lot's desperate, horrifying offer to give them his daughters instead shows the moral chaos. The angels intervene, striking the mob with blindness.
They urge Lot to flee with his family. His sons-in-law think he's joking. The angels practically have to drag Lot, his wife, and 2 daughters out before dawn. The command is clear. Escape for your life. Do not look back or stop anywhere in the valley. Lot manages to negotiate refuge in the small town of Zoar.
Then comes the fiery judgment. The Lord rains sulfur and fire on Sodom and Gomorrah, completely destroying the cities in the plain. Lot's wife, disobeying the command, looks back and becomes a pillar of salt. The text pointedly notes God remembered Abraham in rescuing Lot.
The aftermath is also deeply disturbing. Lot and his daughters end up hiding in a cave. Believing they're the only survivors, the daughters get their father drunk on consecutive nights and lie with him to preserve the family line.
From these incestuous unions come Moab and Ben-Ammi, the ancestors of the Moabites and Ammonites, peoples who would later have significant, often antagonistic relationships with Israel.
In chapter 20, Abraham moves to Gerar, territory ruled by Abimelech. And incredibly, he pulls the "she's my sister" routine again with Sarah.
Yes, Abimelech takes Sarah, but God warns him in a dream. "You are a dead man because of the woman you have taken, for she is a man's wife." Abimelech pleads ignorance and innocence.
God acknowledges his innocence but tells him to restore Sarah. He reveals Abraham as a prophet who will pray for him. Abimelech confronts Abraham, returns Sarah with generous gifts, including 1,000 pieces of silver as a public vindication of her honor.
It's striking. Abraham the prophet acts deceitfully out of fear, while Abimelech the pagan king shows integrity and concern for justice after God's warning. Abraham prays, and God heals Abimelech's household, which had been afflicted with barrenness.
And then finally, the long-awaited promise is fulfilled. Chapter 21. Sarah conceives and bears Abraham a son in his old age, exactly at the time God had promised. Abraham names him Isaac and circumcises him on the 8th day.
Sarah's joy is complete. God has made laughter for me, she says. Everyone who hears will laugh with me. The name Isaac, he laughs, now signifies pure joy and the fulfillment of God's seemingly impossible promise.
But family tensions resurface. At Isaac's weaning feast, Sarah sees Ishmael mocking or playing. The text uses a word related to Isaac's name, sakak. Sarah sees this as a threat to Isaac's inheritance and demands Abraham cast out Hagar and Ishmael.
Abraham is deeply grieved, as Ishmael is his son too. But God tells him to listen to Sarah because the covenant line will be through Isaac. However, God reiterates his promise to make Ishmael a great nation as well.
So Abraham sends Hagar and Ishmael away with bread and water. They wander in the wilderness, the water runs out. Hagar, in despair, places Ishmael under a bush to die and sits weeping some distance away.
But God hears the boy's cry. The angel calls to Hagar from heaven, comforts her, repeats the promise for Ishmael, and opens her eyes to see a well of water. They survive. God is with Ishmael as he grows up.
Now we come to chapter 22, arguably one of the most challenging and profound stories in Genesis. God tests Abraham. The command is terrifying. Take your son, your only son Isaac, whom you love, and offer him there as a burnt offering.
The details are agonizing. Your son, your only son, from Sarah, the son of promise, whom you love. God specifies Isaac. The destination is Moriah. Abraham's obedience is immediate and silent. He rises early, prepares everything, and sets off.
He tells his servants they'll go worship and come again to you, plural. Does that suggest he believed God would raise Isaac?
Later scripture, like Hebrews 11, interprets it exactly that way. Abraham reasoned that God was able even to raise the dead. His statement reflects an incredible, perhaps desperate faith.
On the way, Isaac carries the wood. Abraham carries the fire and the knife. Isaac asks that devastating question. My father, where's the lamb for a burnt offering?
Abraham's reply is laden with meaning. God will provide for himself the lamb for a burnt offering, my son. A statement of faith, a prophecy, perhaps both.
They reach the place. Abraham builds the altar, arranges the wood, binds Isaac, lays him on the altar, and raises the knife, the absolute peak of the test.
And at that very moment, the angel of the Lord calls out, stopping him. Do not lay your hand on the boy, for now I know that you fear God, seeing you have not withheld your son, your only son, from me. The test revealed the depth of Abraham's reverence and trust. Fear here is about obedient faith.
And then the provision. Abraham sees a ram caught by its horns in a thicket. He offers the ram instead of Isaac. He names the place Yahweh Yireh, the Lord will provide, or perhaps the Lord sees.
The angel then calls a second time, confirming the covenant blessings with an oath sworn by God himself. Because Abraham obeyed, his descendants will be countless like stars and sand, possess the gates of their enemies, and through his offspring all nations will be blessed. The obedience solidified the promise.
Chapter 23 shifts tone, dealing with the death of Sarah at age 127 in Hebron. Abraham mourns her deeply.
As a foreigner, Abraham needs to buy land for a burial plot. He negotiates respectfully with the Hittites, the local inhabitants, for the cave of Machpelah. They honor him as a mighty prince.
They offer him the choicest tomb, even for free. But Abraham insists on paying the full market price, 400 shekels of silver, for the field containing the cave. The transaction is public and legally secured.
This act secures the first piece of the promised land for Abraham's family, obtained through integrity and fair dealing, not conquest or gift. It's a tangible claim based on the promise.
Chapter 24 then focuses on finding a wife for Isaac. Abraham, now old, makes his chief servant swear a solemn oath, putting his hand under Abraham's thigh, not to get a wife for Isaac from the Canaanites, but to go back to Abraham's relatives in Mesopotamia.
Abraham expresses strong faith that God's angel will go before the servant and ensure success. But he's also clear, if the woman won't come, the servant is released from the oath, but Isaac must never return there. The future is in Canaan.
The servant travels to Nahor's city in Mesopotamia. At the well, he prays for a specific sign. May the young woman who offers water not only to him but also willingly offers to water his 10 camels, be the one God has chosen for Isaac. It's a significant test of kindness and diligence.
And Rebecca, Abraham's grandniece, appears and does exactly that. She's beautiful, hospitable, and from the right family. The servant gives her expensive gifts and worships God.
Rebecca runs home. Her brother, Laban, impressed by the gifts and the story, welcomes the servant. After the servant explains his entire mission and the divine guidance, Laban and her father Bethuel declare, "The thing has come from the Lord." Rebecca willingly agrees to go.
The chapter ends with Isaac meeting Rebecca. He's meditating in the field at evening. She sees him, modestly veils herself. Isaac brings her into his late mother Sarah's tent, marries her, loves her, and finds comfort after his mother's death. A beautiful conclusion to the mission.
Chapter 25 starts with Isaac praying for Rebecca, who is barren. God answers, and she conceives twins.
But the pregnancy is tumultuous. The babies struggle together within her. She asks God why and receives a prophecy. 2 nations are in your womb. The older shall serve the younger, setting up future conflict.
The births follow. First Esau, red and hairy. Then Jacob, clutching Esau's heel. Isaac is 60.
Jacob's name, Yaakov, is related to the word for heel, akwev, and comes to mean supplanter or deceiver, especially after his later actions.
The brothers grow up very different. Esau, skillful hunter, outdoorsman. Jacob, quiet, dwelling in tents. Isaac favors Esau, perhaps for the venison, while Rebecca favors Jacob, a recipe for family drama.
And that drama unfolds quickly. Esau comes back famished from hunting. Jacob is cooking lentil stew. Jacob demands Esau's birthright, the rights and inheritance of the firstborn, in exchange for the stew. Esau, caring only for his immediate hunger, despises his birthright and sells it for a meal.
The narrator drives the point home. Thus Esau despised his birthright, a crucial character indictment. Chapter 26 sees Isaac facing a famine like his father. He goes to Gerar. God warns him not to go to Egypt and reaffirms the Abrahamic covenant promises directly to him, explicitly linking the blessing to Abraham's obedience.
It emphasizes that covenant faithfulness, or lack thereof, has generational consequences.
And, wouldn't you know it, Isaac repeats his father's mistake in Gerar. He tells King Abimelech, likely a different king with the same title, that Rebekah is his sister, fearing for his life.
The pattern is remarkable. Abimelech discovers the truth when he sees Isaac fondling or playing masakek with Rebekah, that same word root related to Isaac's name again, an intimate act revealing their true relationship.
Abimelech is indignant, rebuking Isaac for endangering his people. He then issues a protective decree for Isaac and Rebekah.
Despite this lapse, Isaac sows crops and reaps 100-fold that year. The Lord blesses him immensely, making him very wealthy. The Philistines become envious and fill in his wells.
Isaac moves away and patiently redigs the wells his father had dug. Conflict arises over the first two, which he names Esek, contention, and Sitna, enmity or accusation.
But he perseveres, digs another well, and finds peace. He names it Rehoboth, broad places, saying, "For now the Lord has made room for us, and we shall be fruitful." It shows Isaac's less confrontational nature compared to his father and God's persistent blessing.
God appears to Isaac at Beersheba, encouraging him and renewing the promise. Isaac builds an altar.
Even Abimelech comes to Isaac seeking a treaty, acknowledging, "We see plainly that the Lord is with you." They make a covenant, confirming the name Beersheba, well of the oath.
Chapter 27 brings the tragic story of the stolen blessing. Isaac is old, his eyesight failing. He wants to give his final, authoritative, patriarchal blessing to Esau. He asks Esau to hunt game and prepare his favorite meal.
Rebekah overhears and springs into action. She orchestrates an elaborate deception for Jacob, prepares a similar meal quickly, dress Jacob in Esau's clothes, cover his hands and neck with goatskins to mimic Esau's hairiness. Jacob voices fear of being cursed, but Rebekah says, "Let your curse be on me."
The deception unfolds. Jacob goes to Isaac. Isaac is suspicious. The voice is Jacob's voice, but the hands are the hands of Esau. But the feel of the hairy hands convinces him. He gives Jacob the blessing meant for Esau, dew of heaven, fatness of earth, people serving him, dominion over his brothers.
Just as Jacob leaves, Esau returns. The moment of discovery is heart-wrenching. Isaac trembled very violently. Esau lets out a great and bitter cry when he realizes the blessing is gone.
Esau cries out, "Is he not rightly named Jacob? For he has supplanted me these 2 times." He recounts the birthright and now the blessing. The name's negative connotation is sealed.
Isaac can only give Esau a secondary lesser blessing, living away from the earth's richness, by the sword, serving his brother, though with a hint of future rebellion. "You shall break his yoke from your neck."
Esau's grief turns to murderous hatred. He vows to kill Jacob after Isaac dies. Rebekah learns of the plot and urges Jacob to flee to her brother Laban in Haran until Esau's anger cools.
Isaac formally sends Jacob away, instructing him to find a wife from Laban's family in Paddan Aram, and this time Isaac knowingly confers the full blessing of Abraham upon Jacob and his descendants.
On his journey fleeing for his life, Jacob stops for the night. He uses a stone for a pillow and has an incredible dream. A ladder, or perhaps a stairway, reaching from earth to heaven with angels ascending and descending on it. God stands above it or beside him.
God identifies himself as the God of Abraham and Isaac, and he personally gives Jacob the core covenant promises. The land, descendants like the dust of the earth spreading in all directions, being a blessing to all families, and crucially, God's personal presence and protection until all promises are fulfilled.
Jacob wakes up in awe, terrified, and realizing the sanctity of the place. Surely the Lord is in this place, and I did not know it. This is none other than the house of God, Bethel, and this is the gate of heaven. He sets up a stone pillow as a pillar, anoints it with oil.
And Jacob makes a vow. It's somewhat conditional. If God will be with him, protect him, provide for him, and bring him back safely, then the Lord will be his God. This stone will be God's house, and he will give God 1/10 of everything. It shows a developing, though perhaps still calculating faith.
Jacob arrives in Haran, chapter 29, finds shepherds at a well, and inquires about Laban. Just then, Rachel, Laban's daughter, arrives with her sheep. Jacob, perhaps moved by emotion and recognizing God's guidance, rolls the heavy stone off the well single-handedly, waters her sheep, kisses her, and weeps.
He introduces himself, and Rachel runs to tell her father. Laban welcomes him warmly. Jacob stays and works for Laban. He falls deeply in love with the beautiful Rachel and offers to work 7 years for her hand in marriage. His love is so great, the 7 years seem like only a few days.
But after the 7 years, Laban deceives Jacob cruelly. At the wedding feast, and under cover of darkness, and perhaps a veil, Laban substitutes his older, less attractive daughter Leah. Jacob discovers the trick only the next morning.
Jacob is furious, confronting Laban. Laban offers a weak excuse about local custom: the older must marry first. Then he makes a deal. Jacob can marry Rachel too after completing Leah's bridal week in exchange for another 7 years of labor. Jacob agrees, caught in a difficult situation. The deceiver is deceived.
This sets up decades of family strife between the two sister wives. The Lord sees Leah is hated, less loved, and opens her womb. She bears Jacob 4 sons in succession: Reuben, see, a son; Simeon hearing, Levi attached, and Judah, praise. Each name reflects her longing for Jacob's love or her gratitude to God.
Rachel, meanwhile, remains barren and becomes desperately envious. She demands children from Jacob. "Give me children or I shall die." Jacob angrily replies, "Am I in the place of God?" Following the earlier pattern, Rachel gives her servant Bilhah to Jacob to bear children for her.
Bilhah bears Dan, judged, and Naphtali, my wrestling. Rachel feels vindicated and claims victory in her struggle with her sister.
Seeing this, Leah, who had temporarily stopped bearing children, gives her servant Zilpah to Jacob. Zilpah bears Gad, fortune or troop, and Asher, happy. The competition is intense.
There's even a strange episode involving mandrakes, believed to be an aphrodisiac. Reuben finds some. Leah uses them to bargain with Rachel for a night with Jacob. From this, Leah conceives again and bears Issachar, wages or hired man, and Zebulun, dwelling or honor. She later also bears a daughter, Dinah.
Finally, after many years, God remembers Rachel. She conceives and bears a son, naming him Joseph, which means both, "He takes away my reproach," and may he add another son.
After Joseph's birth, Jacob wants to leave Laban and return home, chapter 30. Laban, however, has prospered greatly because of Jacob. He says he learned this by divination and urges him to stay, asking Jacob to name his wages.
Jacob proposes a clever plan. He'll take all the speckled, spotted, and black sheep and goats born from then on as his wages. Laban agrees, but then sneakily removes all such animals from the flocks Jacob will tend, trying to minimize Jacob's share.
But Jacob employs ingenious, perhaps folk-based breeding techniques involving peeled rods placed at watering troughs that result in the stronger animals mating and producing offspring with the markings Jacob claims. His flocks increase enormously, while Laban's decrease.
Tensions escalate. Jacob overhears Laban's sons complaining he's taken their father's wealth. He sees Laban's attitude towards him has soured. Then God tells him directly, "Return to the land of your fathers and to your kindred, and I will be with you."
Jacob consults Rachel and Leah, who agree to leave, feeling their father has treated them poorly. They depart secretly while Laban is away shearing sheep. Crucially, Rachel steals her father's teraphim household idols or gods.
Laban discovers their departure and pursues them furiously for 7 days. He catches up in Gilead, but God warns Laban in a dream the night before. Be careful not to say anything to Jacob, either good or bad. A divine restraining order.
The confrontation, chapter 31, is tense. Laban accuses Jacob of deception and, significantly, of stealing his gods. Jacob passionately defends his integrity regarding the departure, but unaware of Rachel's theft, rashly declares that whoever stole the gods shall die.
Laban searches their tents. Rachel cleverly hides the teraphim under her camel saddle and tells her father she can't get up because she's having her period. Laban doesn't find them.
Jacob then unleashes 20 years of frustration on Laban, detailing his hard service, Laban's constant cheating on his wages, and how God protected him. He asserts that only the God of my father, the God of Abraham, and the fear of Isaac prevented Laban from sending him away destitute.
They finally make a covenant, setting up a stone pillar and a heap of stones as a boundary marker and witness. Laban calls it Jigar Sadutha, Aramaic. Jacob calls it Gilead, Hebrew, both meaning heap of witness. They also call it Mizpah, watchtower, invoking God to watch between them when they are separated. Laban blesses his daughters and grandchildren and leaves.
Jacob continues his journey, but now faces his greatest fear, reuniting with Esau. He sends messengers ahead, who return saying Esau's coming to meet him with 400 men. Jacob is terrified, chapter 32.
He divides his family and flocks into 2 groups, hoping one might escape if attacked. He prays earnestly to God, reminding him of his promises and pleading for deliverance. Then he prepares an enormous gift, hundreds of goats, sheep, camels, cattle, donkeys, sent ahead in waves to appease Esau.
That night, Jacob sends his family across the Jabbok River. He remains behind, alone. And there, a man wrestles with him until daybreak. Neither prevails until the man touches Jacob's hip socket, wrenching it. The man asks Jacob to let him go, but Jacob refuses. I will not let you go unless you bless me.
The mysterious opponent asks Jacob's name. Hearing Jacob, he declares, your name shall no longer be called Jacob, but Israel, meaning he struggles with God, or God strives, for you have striven with God and with men and have prevailed. Jacob asks the man's name, but doesn't get an answer. Jacob names the place Peniel, face of God, for I've seen God face to face, and yet my life has been delivered. He limps away as the sun rises.
The encounter with Esau, chapter 33, is stunning. Jacob approaches cautiously, bowing 7 times. But Esau runs to meet him, embraces him, falls on his neck, kisses him, and they weep together. Forgiveness and reconciliation, completely unexpected.
Jacob insists Esau accept his massive gift, saying, to see your face is like seeing the face of God. With such favor you have received me. It's a profound statement of relief and gratitude.
The brothers part peacefully. Esau returns to Seir. Jacob journeys on, eventually settling near the city of Shechem, buying land there, and building an altar he names El Elohi Israel, God, the God of Israel, putting down roots. But peace is shattered in chapter 34. Jacob's daughter Dinah goes out to visit the local women and is raped by Shechem, the son of Hamor, the prince of the land.
Shechem, however, genuinely seems to fall in love with Dinah afterward and wants to marry her. Hamor proposes a general intermarriage and alliance between his people and Jacob's family.
Jacob's sons are outraged by their sister's defilement and respond with calculated deceit. They agree to the alliance if all the Shechemite males undergo circumcision, claiming they can't intermarry with the uncircumcised.
Hamor and Shechem agree and persuade their townsmen. But on the 3rd day, when the men are most vulnerable and sore from the circumcision, 2 of Jacob's sons, Simeon and Levi, Dinah's full brothers, take swords, enter the unsuspecting city, and slaughter every male, including Hamor and Shechem. They rescue Dinah, and the other sons plunder the city.
Jacob is horrified by their violence, not just on moral grounds, but pragmatic ones. You have brought trouble on me by making me stink to the inhabitants of the land. They will gather themselves against me and attack me, and I shall be destroyed. Simeon and Levi justify their actions. Should he treat our sister like a prostitute?
It's a brutal story highlighting the consequences of unchecked anger and revenge, and the deep fractures within Jacob's family. Their violence will have repercussions later in Jacob's final blessing.
Following this crisis, God instructs Jacob, chapter 35, to move on and go up to Bethel, the place of his earlier dream, and build an altar there.
Before going, Jacob leads his household in purification. He tells them to put away all the foreign gods, including, presumably, Rachel's stolen teraphim, and purify themselves. He buries the idols under an oak near Shechem, a significant act of rededication.
At Bethel, God appears to Jacob again. He reaffirms his name change to Israel and reiterates the core covenant blessings: fruitfulness, nations and kings from his line, and the promised land.
Jacob sets up another stone pillar, pours a drink offering and oil on it, formally reconsecrating the site as Bethel, house of God, fulfilling his earlier vow.
But the journey from Bethel brings tragedy. Rachel goes into labor, has a difficult delivery, and dies giving birth to Jacob's 12th son. With her last breath, she names him Ben-Oni, son of my sorrow. But Jacob renames him Benjamin, son of my right hand. Jacob buries Rachel near Bethlehem, setting up a pillar over her tomb.
Another dark note follows. Reuben, Jacob's firstborn, sleeps with Bilhah, Rachel's servant, and Jacob's concubine. The text simply says, "And Israel heard of it." This act forfeits Reuben's birthright privileges, as Jacob's later blessing confirms.
Finally, Jacob returns to his aged father Isaac in Hebron. Isaac dies at 180, and his two sons Esau and Jacob come together to bury him, marking the end of the patriarchal era focused on Isaac.
Chapter 37 pivots to the next generation, focusing dramatically on Joseph, Jacob's, now Israel's, favorite son from his beloved Rachel. Joseph is 17. Jacob shows his favoritism by giving him that ornate, multicolored coat. His brothers naturally hate him for it. Joseph's dreams exacerbate the situation. He dreams their sheaves of grain bow down to his sheaf. Then he dreams the sun, moon, and 11 stars bow down to him. Even Jacob rebukes him for this, though he kept the matter in mind. The brothers are consumed with envy.
The opportunity for revenge comes when Jacob sends Joseph to check on his brothers, tending flocks near Shechem. They see him coming from afar and conspire to kill him. Reuben, the eldest, intervenes, suggesting they throw him into a pit instead, planning to rescue him later. But while Reuben is away, Judah proposes selling Joseph to a passing caravan of Ishmaelites Midianites rather than shedding his blood.
So Joseph is sold for 20 pieces of silver and taken down to Egypt. The brothers cover their crime by dipping Joseph's special coat in goat's blood and presenting it to Jacob, letting him conclude a wild animal killed his beloved son. Jacob mourns inconsolably for years.
Meanwhile, in Egypt, chapter 39, Joseph is sold to Potiphar, the captain of Pharaoh's guard. The Lord was with Joseph, and he finds success and favor, eventually being put in charge of Potiphar's entire household.
Trouble finds him again through Potiphar's wife, who repeatedly tries to seduce him. Joseph consistently refuses, citing loyalty to Potiphar, and crucially, how then can I do this great wickedness and sin against God? One day she grabs his garment, he flees, leaving it behind. She uses the garment as evidence to falsely accuse him of attempted rape.
Potiphar, enraged, throws Joseph into the royal prison. But even there, the Lord was with Joseph. He gains the favor of the chief jailer, who puts him in charge of the other prisoners.
While imprisoned, chapter 40, Joseph interprets the dreams of two fellow inmates, Pharaoh's chief cupbearer and chief baker. He predicts the cupbearer's restoration to office in 3 days and the baker's execution. Both predictions come true exactly. Joseph asks the cupbearer to remember him to Pharaoh, but once restored, the cupbearer forgets Joseph for 2 full years.
Until Pharaoh himself has 2 disturbing dreams. Chapter 41, 7 fat cows devoured by 7 lean cows, and 7 plump ears of grain swallowed by 7 thin ears. None of Egypt's magicians or wise men can interpret them.
Then the cupbearer suddenly remembers Joseph. Joseph is hastily cleaned up and brought before Pharaoh. He humbly states, "It is not in me. God will give Pharaoh a favorable answer." He interprets the dreams as predicting 7 years of great abundance throughout Egypt, followed by 7 years of devastating famine.
Joseph doesn't just interpret, he offers a wise plan. Pharaoh should appoint a discerning man to oversee the collection and storage of 1/5 of the harvest during the plentiful years to prepare for the famine.
Pharaoh and his officials are impressed. Pharaoh declares, "Can we find a man like this in whom is the Spirit of God?" He appoints Joseph, now 30 years old, as vizier, second in command over all Egypt, giving him his signet ring, fine linen robes, and a gold chain.
Joseph marries Asenath, daughter of an Egyptian priest, and has 2 sons during the abundant years. Manasseh, God has made me forget all my hardship, and Ephraim, God has made me fruitful in the land of my affliction. He efficiently manages the storage of immense amounts of grain.
The famine hits, severe not just in Egypt but surrounding lands, including Canaan. Jacob sends his 10 older sons, all except Benjamin, Rachel's only other son, down to Egypt to buy grain. Chapter 42.
Joseph, now a powerful Egyptian governor, recognizes his brothers immediately, but they have no idea who he is. He speaks harshly, accusing them of being spies.
To test them, he imprisons them for 3 days. Then he releases 9, keeping Simeon as a hostage, demanding they prove their story by returning with their youngest brother, Benjamin. He secretly has their payment returned in their grain sacks.
On the journey home and upon arrival, the brothers are distressed by the returned money and Simeon's detention. They confess to each other their guilt regarding Joseph years ago. In truth, we are guilty concerning our brother, in that we saw the distress of his soul when he begged us and we did not listen. They believe this trouble is retribution. Joseph, who understood them, using an interpreter earlier, had overheard this and was moved to tears privately.
Jacob is devastated by the news and flatly refuses to let Benjamin go, fearing he'll lose him too. But the famine becomes severe. Reuben offers his own sons as surety, but Jacob refuses. Finally, Judah makes a passionate pledge, offering himself as surety for Benjamin's safe return, chapter 43. Jacob reluctantly agrees, sending them back with double money and gifts.
Back in Egypt, Joseph sees Benjamin and arranges a private meal for them. He seats them in exact birth order, astonishing them. He gives Benjamin a portion 5 times larger than the others. After the meal, Joseph instructs his steward to fill their sacks with grain, return their money again, and hide his personal silver cup in Benjamin's sack. Chapter 44.
Shortly after they depart, Joseph sends his steward after them. The steward accuses them of stealing the cup. They vehemently deny it, even saying whoever has it should die. The sacks are searched, and the cup is found in Benjamin's sack. They are devastated and return to the city.
Judah steps forward and delivers one of the most moving speeches in Genesis. He explains Benjamin's importance to their aged father, recounts his pledge, takes full responsibility, and offers himself as a slave in Benjamin's place, so the boy can return and prevent their father from dying of grief.
Joseph can't restrain himself any longer. Chapter 45, he orders all Egyptians out of the room, breaks down weeping loudly, and reveals himself. I am Joseph. Is my father still alive? His brothers are speechless, terrified.
Joseph urges them closer, reassuring them. He offered that profound theological interpretation of his suffering. Do not be distressed or angry with yourselves because you sold me here, for God sent me before you to preserve life. So it was not you who sent me here, but God. He sees divine providence in their evil actions.
He instructs them to hurry back to Jacob, tell him the news, and bring the entire family, everyone and everything, down to Egypt to settle in the fertile region of Goshen, where Joseph can provide for them during the remaining 5 years of famine. Pharaoh hears the news, is pleased, and provides wagons and supplies for the journey.
The brothers return to Jacob. He initially doesn't believe their incredible story. But when he sees the wagons sent by Pharaoh, the spirit of their father Jacob revived. He declares, "It is enough. Joseph, my son, is still alive. I will go and see him before I die." Chapter 46.
Jacob, Israel, and his entire household, 70 people in total, as the text counts them, begin the journey. At Beersheba, the southern border of the Promised Land, Jacob offers sacrifices. God speaks to him in a night vision. "Do not be afraid to go down to Egypt, for there I will make you into a great nation. I myself will go down with you, and Joseph's hand shall close your eyes." Reassurance for the journey. The reunion between Jacob and Joseph in Goshen is incredibly moving. Joseph made ready his chariot and went up to meet Israel, his father, in Goshen. He presented himself to him and fell on his neck and wept on his neck a good while. Jacob says, "Now let me die, since I have seen your face and know that you are still alive."
Joseph strategically advises his brothers to tell Pharaoh they are shepherds, an occupation looked down upon by Egyptians. This ensures they'll be allowed to settle separately in Goshen, preserving their identity and avoiding assimilation while benefiting from the land's fertility.
Jacob is presented to Pharaoh. The aged patriarch blesses the powerful ruler of Egypt. Chapter 47.
Joseph skillfully manages the ongoing famine, eventually acquiring all the land of Egypt, except the priests, for Pharaoh in exchange for food, making the people tenants who pay 1/5 of their produce to Pharaoh, a system that lasts for generations.
Jacob lives in Egypt for 17 years. As his death approaches, he makes Joseph swear to bury him not in Egypt, but in Canaan, in the family burial cave of Machpelah.
Jacob then calls Joseph's 2 sons, Manasseh and Ephraim, born in Egypt. He formally adopts them as his own sons, giving them status equal to Reuben and Simeon, thus granting Joseph a double portion of the inheritance. Joseph presents them for blessing, Manasseh the elder positioned for Jacob's right hand.
But Jacob intentionally crosses his hands, placing his right hand, the hand of greater blessing, on Ephraim, the younger, and his left on Manasseh. Despite Joseph's protest, Jacob insists, prophesying that while Manasseh will be great, Ephraim will be even greater, his descendants becoming a multitude of nations.
Jacob's blessing invokes God's faithfulness throughout his life. The God before whom my fathers Abraham and Isaac walked, the God who has been my shepherd all my life long, the angel who has redeemed me from all evil, bless the boys.
Then in chapter 49, Jacob gathers all 12 sons for his final prophetic blessings. These poetic pronouncements often reflect the son's past actions and foretell the future character and destiny of their respective tribes.
Reuben, the firstborn, loses his preeminence because he went up to his father's bed. Simeon and Levi are condemned for their violence at Shechem. They will be scattered in Israel. Judah, however, receives the promise of leadership, praise from his brothers, victory over enemies, the scepter and ruler staff until Shiloh comes, a passage often seen as messianic. Joseph receives abundant blessings for fruitfulness and divine protection.
After blessing all his sons, Jacob gives his final charge. Bury me with my fathers in the cave of Machpelah. Then he draws his feet up into the bed, breathes his last, and is gathered to his people.
Chapter 50 describes the elaborate mourning for Jacob. Joseph leads the process. Jacob is embalmed, an Egyptian practice taking 40 days. The Egyptians mourn him for 70 days. Joseph gets Pharaoh's permission for the burial in Canaan.
The funeral procession is immense. Egyptian officials, Joseph's household, elders, chariots, horsemen, a very great company. They hold a solemn mourning ceremony en route in Canaan.
Jacob is buried in the cave of Machpelah, the resting place of Abraham, Sarah, Isaac, Rebekah, and Leah, a fulfillment of his final wish.
After returning to Egypt, Jacob's death resurfaces the brothers' fears. They worry Joseph will finally retaliate now that their father is gone. They send a message appealing for forgiveness, citing Jacob's dying wish, and offer themselves as Joseph's servants.
Joseph weeps at their fear and distrust. His response is another classic statement of faith and forgiveness. Do not fear, for am I in the place of God? As for you, you meant evil against me, but God meant it for good, to bring it about that many people should be kept alive, as they are today. He reassures them completely.
Joseph lives to be 110 years old, seeing his descendants to the third and fourth generations, Ephraim's grandchildren, Manasseh's great-grandchildren.
Before he dies, Joseph gives his brothers a final prophecy and instruction. I am about to die, but God will surely visit you and bring you up out of this land to the land that he swore to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob. A reaffirmation of the Exodus promise.
And he makes them swear an oath. When God visits you, you shall carry up my bones from here, an act of faith that God will fulfill his promise.
Joseph dies, is embalmed, and placed in a coffin in Egypt. Genesis ends not in the promised land, but in Egypt, with the patriarchs deceased, but with the covenant promises very much alive, waiting for God's future action.
So we've covered an immense amount of ground, from the creation of everything, through the fall, the flood, the lives of the patriarchs, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and ending with Joseph in Egypt. These are truly the foundational stories.
Absolutely. And as we've seen, several key themes weave through it all. God's absolute sovereignty, even using human sin for his purposes, his unwavering faithfulness to his covenant promises, despite generations of human failure and weakness, the stark reality and consequences of sin, the complex, often messy dynamics within families, and this overarching sense of divine purpose guiding history.
So for you listening, what's the takeaway? These ancient narratives, they offer these incredible insights into, well, us, into human nature, our relationship with the divine, our purpose. You find these aha moments about providence, about how God works through flawed people, about the weight of choices.
Right. They're not just dusty old tales. They lay the groundwork for understanding so much that follows, both in the Bible and arguably in Western thought. They grapple with the biggest questions. Origins, meaning good, evil, suffering, hope. They show the raw, complex reality of human faith, the struggles, the doubts, the triumphs, and the relentless persistence of God's promises.
It really leaves you thinking, doesn't it? Genesis, the book of beginnings, sets so much in motion, but ends with the people in Egypt waiting for the fulfillment of promises made centuries before. It makes you wonder, what comes next? How do these promises continue to unfold? And maybe, how do these ancient patterns of promise, failure, and grace echo in our own lives today? Something to ponder. Until next time on The Deep Dive.